welcome everybody. This is week 4. And this will be the last week of class. And we're going to mostly look at ComfyUI today. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But before, let me share my screen. Let me also share some slides with everybody. There are slides if you need them. All right, so as I mentioned, this is the last week of class. Most of my classes are not 4 weeks long. This feels like a whirlwind of a class. Maybe it did for you too. And as always happens, like every time I start a new class, or like I end up figuring out what the class should be as soon as I finish the class. So like now I know what the next version of this class should be. But yeah, so thank you everybody that joined. I hope you found something that is sort of helpful. And likewise, I hope you stay in touch, and if there are things you want to expand or like figure out more of, like please reach out to me. I'm always happy to help sort of like build upon what we've sort of already covered in class. I used to actually send out like a feedback form to everybody at the end of class, and like I feel like people felt like I was like badgering them into responding. So instead I'll say like you're more than welcome to DM me on Slack or email me if you ever have feedback that you want to provide to me. Things that work, things that didn't work. As I mentioned, like I kind of always figure out like after the class is over, like, oh, I should have done it this way or that way. But hopefully the next class will sort of iterate on. And I do try to always teach new material, which is kind of why these classes don't always work out the way I expect them to. I am teaching at NYU starting in March, so I'll probably be just doing that for a little bit. But I think probably in the summer I'll be teaching another class again. So if there are things of my work you've seen, things that you've seen other people make that you're interested in learning about, you can always reach out to me and let me know. I think probably the next class will be something on training models, training your own LoRa's for image and video generation. Just because I haven't really covered that in a couple of years, so I'll probably go back to that. And it's something I do in my day job. But if there are other things people want to learn, I'm always down to chat about those and try to set up classes. So again, thanks so much. And as a reminder, the Slack channel lasts about 90 days before stuff starts disappearing. So if there are comments in there, people leaving a video you like that's there, like download it, like take a screenshot, do whatever you want to do, just because this stuff will start to disappear. I will also keep hosting like Q&A sessions if anyone wants them. So we'll definitely do one this week on Thursdays. But then sort of after that, if like people want to keep doing them, like I'm happy to set them up. But around middle of March, I'll probably like drop off as I will be teaching at ITP. Okay. This week we're going to look at ComfyUI. ComfyUI is probably like the tool that most AI artists, or like, I don't really want to necessarily call them professional AI artists, but just say like people that spend a lot of time making AI art have sort of moved to this tool. And it's super customizable, which is why people like it. It's quite scalable in the sense that you can do a lot with it. The downside is that it's got a pretty high learning curve, especially if you want to get really custom with things. So this won't really be an intro to ComfyUI class. Instead, what I'll do is I'll like pull up things that are called workflows. So workflows are basically a file, like a document you can share with someone else. When you open it on your end of Comfy, you basically like see how someone made something, and then you can sort of like make a couple tweaks and generate your own thing like that. So in this class, like I've got a handful of workflows pre-prepared. And I'll sort of briefly touch on like what you can edit, what you can change, and sort of why they work the way they do. But I won't necessarily go through all of Comfy, just because that is like at least a 7-week class. In fact, I haven't updated the image yet here. I did in fact teach a 7-week class this summer on ComfyUI. So for anyone that's interested, that is linked to from here. Let me just grab my image here. So that's linked to from the slides, and it's all on YouTube now. And like I said, it's about a 7-week course, about 2 weeks or 2 hours every week, just like this class. Golan, who's in this class, took this one in the summer because he was going to teach his Carnegie Mellon students how to use this. So this is a pretty helpful class, and we go like real bare bones, like from the beginning, how all the pieces add up. So we'll kind of skip that for this for today's session, but if you are interested in sort of getting really deep into ComfyUI, we get fairly deep into it using this class. So please feel free to watch that. And I'm always happy to answer more questions on it, but I also, since we don't have 2 hours, I don't want to spend too much time getting into like the weeds of ComfyUI. It is also a platform that constantly changes. So the videos that you might watch in this, like the UIs changed slightly since July, of course. Um, it all works fairly the same way, and there might be different tools, that sort of thing. There's also a ton of tutorials on ComfyUI on YouTube. So if you're ever looking to like learn how something works, you can just type in like what the node is and then ComfyUI, and I'm sure someone has something up there. So I think my class will give you a good introduction to the material, and then you can sort of go from there. ComfyUI is something you could install locally, but I really don't recommend it. Unless you have like a gaming PC that has a really powerful GPU. Just like with everything we talked about in this class, like you need a really nice GPU to be able to run most AI models. And instead, like most people don't have that. Even on a Mac, like even though you've got powerful GPUs, they're not necessarily set up to be really good for AI tools. So while you can install these, basically what would happen is it would just take you like 10 minutes to generate a single image as it goes through your CPU, that sort of thing. Erica, you have a question?
Oh, okay there. Sorry, I was having trouble
Okay,
clicking
nice.
my audio. Just a quick question about the GPUs. Do you have any sort of like for what is happening right now? What a good recommend like what should one be looking for a GPU card or
Yeah,
like a for a NVIDIA card now?
yeah. So generally an NVIDIA card's the best. Um, Most people like the 3090, 4090, 5090s. The 5090s just came out, and I think they're 24 gigabytes of VRAM. They're also quite expensive, like they're going to cost a couple grand. And then you also need a PC essentially that can power those. Like you can't really run those on a Mac. So you would need either a PC or a Linux machine. So I have some of my own GPUs and I run them off Linux. And in fact, I generally run ComfyUI off that locally. Um, so you just have to invest a certain amount of money, like you're talking about 3 or 4,000 USD to sort of be able to set that up, to get a nice GPU with like all the things. So most of us don't have that money. Most of us are not using the tools like that frequently. So what I recommend instead is this tool called Run Comfy. And Run Comfy, let me get out of this here real quick. Run Comfy is basically like a web platform for running these tools themselves. So if you go to ComfyUI, run ComfyUI, you'll see that basically like what you have is you can rent a machine and they have a bunch of tools and that sort of thing that you can then power from there. So Run Comfy charges by the hour. Actually, it charges by the minute, but like the pricing is by the hour. So you can rent one of these. You can rent sort of depending on what you're doing. You can rent a fairly inexpensive GPU that they have maybe for just generating images at maybe say $1 an hour, maybe even less, all the way up to like really, really, really high-end GPUs where they might be charging you $5 an hour, where you could basically do anything that's available to you. Like the thing with video is also because video generates multiple frames at one time, it requires a little bit of a higher GPU as well. So we're gonna look at Run Comfy today. I generally recommend that it's just a nice starting place. If you find you're using it 8 hours a day, 5 times a week, then maybe you do want to start to invest in your own tools. But in general, I would say you don't really like need it just to get started with these sort of things. And in fact, Run Comfy also upgrades their stuff. They offer new material, like that sort of thing. So it's almost beneficial for the majority of people to use a service like this. So when you come to Run Comfy, you'll see that there are like what they call workflow community. So again, I mentioned that a lot of these tools are shareable. There's a big community around building them, and they help build what are called workflows. So each one of these on this page is sort of a workflow that does one thing in particular. The nice thing about Run Comfy, in addition to sort of what a training to install ComfyUI yourself is, ComfyUI, if I were to spend like 2 hours helping people get their set up on their own machine, you need to like install a bunch of software, you need to install every model like one by one. The nice thing about Run Comfy is it's actually set up to sort of come pre-install with all the things each one of these workflows needs. So when you scroll through some of these workflows, like say you want to do sort of this like face guidance thing where you can sort of provide your own input face and then change someone else's face doing that, it's going to come pre-installed with all the material you need in order to make that work. To do that outside of Run Comfy takes about 20 minutes. You have to like install the right things. There are gigabytes of files, so it just takes a lot. So for most users, I would actually say something like this is probably good enough, unless you're going to be doing like a ton of work with these tools. So if you haven't already, please go to runcomfy.com/comfyui and create an account. I think they accept like Google accounts and that sort of thing. And then you'll want to add some money to your account. And I don't even know where to do that here. I think you can do it if I go to this. Basically, what'll happen is I'm going to send you a URL to a thing. I'm going to send you a URL to my workflow. So let me paste this in a chat for everybody. It's also linked to in the notes as well if you want that. So that's the URL. So if you can go ahead and open that, it should guide you, I think. Let me just paste it in myself. Yeah, so it's going to show you this this workflow. The reason that I would recommend doing this is that I hope we're going to find out in a minute. I believe this comes installed with everything that I've already set up for us, which is really nice because RunComfy just added this feature maybe a month or two ago. In my previous class, we spent a lot of time just installing everything. So it's like, all right, let's go install this. Let's go install this. Let's go download these models. I hope and I think the way this works is that if when we hit run this workflow and set up our machines, it will all come pre-installed. Now, it might take 5 to 10 minutes for that to get set up, but that's still way better than me even to go through step by step. So open that link and then we'll hit run this workflow. And I'm going to run an extra large. That's a little bit more than you really need, but it's going to be a little bit faster for me. I would say for most of you, running the large is going to be fine. And that is, I assume most of you have not subscribed to their system. So it's going to be like 175 an hour. And obviously we're going to have like a 2-hour class. So you'll end up spending about 350 or whatever. They do have a subscription as well, where like basically the costs are offset. There's some other nicer things like it'll save more of your files for you, like that sort of thing. I think for this class or this particular like week, you don't really need to worry about that. But if you did want to subscribe, I think it's like $30 a month. Like all things are priced at $30 a month for AI tools. I don't know why it's that price point, but you get a discount on your hours as well as some other features. So for most of you, I recommend hitting launch on the large. I'm gonna hit a launch on the XL. If you want to be a little bit faster and maybe more generate stuff a little bit quicker, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So just go ahead and come up here and hit launch. And then you need to set your time. I believe this is also where you can add funds. If you have 0, you'll need to add some money here as well. And then you'll go ahead and set this up to, so there's an auto timer. Basically, this will turn off. Your machine will turn off after this time. You can extend it if you want to. But if we just set this to 2 hours, it'll probably be fine for class because it's already 8:20. And I'm going to go ahead and hit launch. Lisa, if you want to just open this URL and get an account set up, I'll rerun through the steps for you once you're ready. Okay, so now what's basically happening is it's basically setting up a machine for us and it's going to install everything we need. Now, this is going to take at least 5 minutes. It will probably take 5 to 10 minutes. So what we'll do while we wait in the background for this to run is I'll just walk through what we're going to do today, and then we'll get started once everything launches. One of the challenges with a tool like this is it does take a little bit of time to get set up. It just, this is going to take 5 minutes to get this running. We're going to run our machine for the first time once it's open. It'll take a bit longer because it's going to need to install all the models and put them in the cache and that sort of thing. So the next 15-ish minutes might be a little annoying. And you might recognize that like, oh, there's a reason why you might want to like set up your own system in addition to this. Like every time you open this, you have to go through these steps. So it's a little slow. All right, while this loads in the background, let's talk a little about what we're going to do today. So we're going to go through like the classic sort of animation thing, which is called a walk cycle. People are probably familiar with that. If you've ever seen an animation, it's basically like someone walking, right? Yeah, so like their legs move, their arms move, and you can kind of turn it into a loop, right? So like if your legs and arms are always at the same position after like maybe say a second or two, you basically have a loop. So we're going to make what's called a walk cycle. That cycle can be looped as many times as we want it to be. And that will allow us to basically take any image of someone walking and we can apply a bunch of styles over top of it. So that's what we're going to walk through today. If you've never seen a walk cycle before, there's probably a ton of material online. For example, I found this really great, this website, which I guess is someone did like 100 days, like every day they did a different walk cycle. And there's some really like cute animations here. So there's like a really basic walk cycle. They kind of one of the things about walking is that you can imply feeling and emotion with these things. So a lot of this is like, okay, how fast can they walk? How slow can they walk? How is their head positioned in addition to their body? Um, you've got things like jumping, walking faster, like all these sort of speed things. So there's a ton of different opportunities within a walk cycle. So what we'll basically do for this class is we're going to go find what was called a walk cycle reference. So there are videos online of basically people walking, and you can basically use those like a traditional animator would sort of download that and like almost like onion skin draw over top of it. What we're going to do instead is we're going to use some AI tools to quickly pull out the pose of that person and then be able to apply a style over top of that pose. Kind of matches what we did last week a little bit, where we were starting to do stuff with like depth and position and pose. We'll basically be able to apply that to like a walk cycle. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to find a walk cycle. What I am going to do is I'm going to send everyone a link to a video file that you can download and use this. I just found this on YouTube. This particular person, apparently, by the look of it, video, it looks like this account just has a bunch of different walk cycles. Oh, that's interesting. URL was wrong. So this person, if you go to there, and also if you could just go to YouTube and go to like walk cycle reference, you'll see in this case, they have female bodies, male bodies. There are lots of people walking on treadmills. That's a very common thing. So what we will want to do is we'll just want to download one of these video files. So I've already downloaded this one for you. And let me just share it with you really quickly. Find that link to my files here. Okay, share this with everybody. So if you go to this URL, you can download this file. And this is just a very short, it's probably like 5 seconds of someone walking. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring this into Comfy, and we'll need to do a little bit of manipulation with the video file. You'll notice when you first open it, it kind of starts with someone standing at sort of a sort of standing position, and they move into a walking position, and they kind of come to a stop. So what we want to do, and I've already kind of pre-done this for us, is we want to find the loop. We want to find the moment where the video loops. And I've got that already set up for us in ComfyUI. And once it's up and running, I'm going to sort of show you how to do that. But that's kind of the precursor to all this work. So you need to go and find a walk cycle reference. So whether it's a video like this, whether it's you go out and you ask someone to film you and you make like a hop and a skip kind of thing, you can do that very easily. The key thing that I would recommend is that try to shoot it on as simple of a background as possible, and make sure your whole body is in the scene. So if you're going to jump and skip or something, make sure your head doesn't get cut off as you go through that walk cycle. So again, we're in this class, we're just going to use this as a reference to that's something I found and we can all use it, but you could always use your own. And there's a very easy way to replace the video in ComfyUI to get started with that. So this is sort of the key thing, is finding a good walk cycle. The better your walk cycle is and the better that it does the pose you want to do, the better that your output is going to be. So this sort of reference video is kind of like a key thing to find. Let me just check to see. Cool, I'm set up here. If you wouldn't mind, just give me a thumbs up or mentioning yourself in the chat once your Run Comfy's open. It should open to something that looks kind of like this. Ready? Okay, cool, great. Are there any red blocks? If you like sort of make sure you see all of these blocks. None of these are red for you, is that right? Like bright red? Cool, great. Okay, awesome. Run Comfy is already working better than it used to, so that's great. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is I mentioned that there's sort of these things called workflows, and I'm going to assume everyone sees 2 tabs. Is that right? You see an unsaved workflow, and then an unsaved workflow too. Okay, Erica.
No.
Okay, so you're not seeing that. What else? What do you see there?
Oh yeah, I was seeing the text and code window. I was
Okay, sorry. Yes, this is right. If you see something that looks like this, that's good. If it's bright red, like
yeah,
fire engine
yeah,
red, that's bad. Okay, great. You're
I'm
good.
good.
Okay, cool. Alex, what are you seeing in terms of your tabs here?
It just says tutorial with a dot next to it.
Oh, interesting. Does it say stop motion walk here at the top?
Oh, actually, no.
Okay. For you, what I recommend you do is hit stop, and then it's going to stop your machine. You're going to want to go back and reopen the link I have here
Sorry,
uh,
where's stop? I think I
at the
missed.
top here.
Oh, there. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
got it.
It's going to say, do you want to stop your machine? And you'll say yes. And then you're going to want to reopen this. I think somehow what happened is you didn't open this link.
Oh, which?
This one here. So make sure you open this one and then hit run workflow from there.
Okay. Um, yeah. Okay.
Cool.
I think I did. I clicked your link that you had before, but
Who knows? Maybe these links are not always working the way I expect. This is kind of a new feature from them, and it'll be huge if it works for us because it's gonna make everything way easier. So let's try and see if that works, and just give me a thumbs up whenever you're ready. In the meantime, I'll sort of talk us through like what this is and how this all works. So, and then actually let's start with the most basic version. So I'm gonna download a workflow and send it to everyone. So we are going to use this one. So if everyone can download this drive file, it should be named stop motion walk one pt1.json. Cool. Everybody's got that. And then so when you open Run Comfy, it kind of has this like big folder here. We're going to kind of clear that out of the way because we want more space to sort of actually work around things. So to close this panel, you just hit these two little double arrows here. And that's going to close that out. We'll still be able to access all this if we want to, but now see you've got a little bit more space to work with. Okay, so it's super easy to load a workflow. You basically just drag the workflow file into this canvas area. So what I'm going to do is, let's make sure I have that file downloaded. I don't yet. So I'm going to download this file. And what I'm going to do is with the Run Comfy window open, I'm going to click on that file and just drag it into this space here. And you'll see there's a plus sign. And when you let go of it, you should see your workflow kind of change a little bit. And you should see something that looks like this. So there will be, you might not have your walking video yet. We may have to upload that, and we'll do that in a second. But you should see like two blue boxes, and then like some other nodes here. Does everyone see that? Cool. Okay, so the way a workflow in Comfy works is it moves from left to right. And what you'll see is, Erica, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So how did you open that in your workflow um, box thing? Like how did you clicked, looked like you clicked in the workflow space and then a window opened and then you could just drag it. Did you do that within Run Comfy or did you just do that outside of
I
Run
just dragged
Comfy?
that. So yeah, so I took my file here,
Oh, I
dragged it
see.
in.
Mr. Mac, you're where,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry. So if you're not on a Mac, you can also go to workflow open.
Okay.
And then they'll ask you, yeah, sorry, that's helpful. I forget that you're not a Mac. I'm so used to teaching people that only a Macs. So if you go to workflow open,
Oh,
then
there.
you
Okay.
can navigate to that file and open it that way.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, cool. Okay. So Comfy workflows work from left to right. And the way I've set up the couple workflows we're going to use today is pretty much anything you're going to want to edit is going to be on the right-hand side here. Like there's a couple of things we're going to edit sort of in this zone. And then what's going to happen is as it runs, it's going to kind of spit out outputs to the right. So don't necessarily worry about, I'm going to point out a couple key things that are in each of these workflows, but you can kind of just like squint and like ignore certain things, except for sort of your inputs and your outputs. Cool. Okay. So let's start by uploading our video. So if you come sort of down to the bottom left-hand corner here, there's a section here that says load video upload. I assume most of you don't see this video playing here. Is that right? Okay, cool. That's fine. So you're gonna do you're gonna click this little button here that says choose video to upload. And you're going to choose that video that you sort of downloaded, that walk video. So you'll choose the video, you'll hit open, and it's going to take maybe a second or two for the video to upload. And you'll know the video is uploaded when it actually starts to play here in this space. So for this workflow, there's only two things we need to do. We need to upload our video, and then we're going to come over to this green box here, and we're going to put in a prompt. So remember that we want to have a person walking. So clearly the prompt needs to be something like, you know, a man in a spacesuit walking on the moon. Anything that could be a person, a thing in a person walking will generally work as a good prompt here, because we already have our sort of prompt set up, that sort of thing. So feel free to just play with whatever. Like I'm going to put in a couple sort of like key things here, like just to get some stylistic outputs. We talked a little bit about base models last week. This uses SDXL, which is not the newest model. It's sort of like a couple years old now, but it's still quite good. So you can kind of get away with some like a decent length of prompt. So if you wanted to provide something like, I don't know, the man's helmet is bright gold, and the moon is a cool blue color. And then we can, as we generate stuff, if you ever want to like sort of remove something, this is the negative prompt. So you basically have a positive prompt of what you do want to see, and then you've got a negative prompt here of what you don't want to see. In general, what I like to do is I like to generate stuff first, see what gets output. And then if I don't like the output, then I might remove or try to remove things by using the negative prompts. So green is positive, red is negative, and that's all you really need to worry about. So at this point, we have generally everything we want here. Now, I'm noticing I made one mistake here. So the way this walk cycle works, I can sort of walk you through how this video works, is there's this video file folder here. And in here are a bunch of parameters. So this video by default is 25 frames per second, so it's probably shot in Europe. You can set custom widths and custom heights if you want to change the resolution of your video. Then there's two important things here. So as I mentioned, the walk cycle with this person, it starts with him walking, and then it ends with him slowing down. So I found the loop was about a 25, so it's a 1 second loop. So it's about 25 frames in is when the loop kind of starts, and then it's like 25 frames for a single loop. So in this case, what I've done is I've skipped the first 25 frames so that I just start 1 second in, and then I'm actually skipping every other frame. So again, this is sort of stop motion-y kind of stuff, right? You could set this to 1, and it would just give you every single frame for a second, which will give you 25 frames. The problem is that when we look at this, it's going to output quite fast and it's going to be kind of flickery. So what I recommend you do is leave this at 2, and you can edit any of these by just clicking on the number, and it'll pop up this value, and you can sort of enter in a number and then hit OK. Now there's one other thing up here, which is the length of our video. This is, let me add this here, length of video. This is set to be 50 frames. So this is going to grab 50 frames. Now that's probably a little bit much for this particular workflow right now. It's just going to take longer to generate. The more frames you have, the longer it takes to generate. So in this case, let's click on this value here of 50, and let's just set it to 25. So we'll put in 25, and then we'll click OK. That's just going to generate our loop a little bit quicker for us, and that'll be kind of nice. Now, the other thing you probably noticed about this video is the video itself is kind of split into two, right? So there is this person walking on the left, and then it's like kind of the same video, but it's a frontal view. So what I want is I just want the left-hand view. So I've got this little node here. Again, you don't need to worry about this because it's already set up for this video. But if you did upload a different walking video, just recognize that this tool is cropping this thing. So I'm basically only cropping the left-hand side of this. So it's going to actually output just this left-hand half of the image. If you do want to play with this at a later date and you want to play with these values and you get stuck, let me know. I'm happy to sort of walk through that. But this is basically just cropping this video to be just this half. So when we run this, we should get 25 frames of just this on the left-hand side. So if you have now uploaded your video and put in your prompt, we can go ahead and hit play on this. This first time that we run this is going to take a little bit of time. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to know. So that say crop video little, what do you call those modules or
These are
what?
called nodes. So
Nodes. Yes.
each box is what's called a node.
A node. Okay. And so it says hash 38 ComfyUI essentials. Is this something you made or is it something that you can install, like their little plugins? Like, can you search a library of these
That's a
things?
great question. So yes, Comfy is all built of these nodes. And these nodes, so anything that says ComfyUI Essentials is one that already comes pre-installed with Comfy.
Okay.
But there are also, we probably won't look at this in this class, but there's this thing called the manager, which means you can download other people's custom nodes as well.
Oh,
So I've kind of already installed everything we need for these couple sessions, but when you go through that ComfyUI class, you'll see there are a ton of nodes. Actually, it's kind of a problem with how many nodes there are because they're all named the same things. It becomes a nightmare. So yes, you can install these and you can find them anywhere. And then the 38 is like the order in which things were made, which gets a little confusing. But essentially, it's just it sort of tells you where these things came from.
got it. Got it.
Cool.
So wait, in the manager, you can search for.
You can search for nodes. You can also search for models. There's a bunch of stuff you can do through the manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, cool. So let's hit play here. So to run this, the thing about ComfyUI is and I should also mention, you can pinch out and zoom in and out by just sort of pinching and zooming. Run Comfy has this issue where if you do that on outside of the canvas area, it'll sometimes zoom your UI to where you can't get back to it. So if you lose your UI, just let me know and we can refresh the page to try to get it back. It might even happen to me in this session. It always happens, to be quite honest. So if I zoom out a little bit, you can sort of see like I've got all these nodes and all connected to each other. Basically what's going to happen is when I hit this button, actually let's hit it now because it is going to take a little bit of time. So if we hit the play button here that says Q, basically what that's going to do is you'll see it already lit up one of these boxes green. It's going to go through each one of these steps one by one. And sometimes it's going to load a model file for us. Sometimes it's going to do some processing for us, but basically it walks through this workflow until we get our output video. So you can see this box is green. What this is doing, if we actually zoom in here, is you'll see it says load checkpoint. So it's loading a model file. These model files are quite large. So it's loading this very large model file and it takes a minute or so. The nice thing about the system is it will cache your model files. So this first time we run this is going to be quite slow. When we run it again, it'll be a little bit faster because a lot of this stuff's already saved for us. This is kind of the nice thing about Run Comfy is it's going to be a little bit faster every time we run it. But as we add new nodes and add new model files, it's going to take longer and longer for us to process it. You'll also see at the top here, there's this bar that's sort of green, and it's sort of telling you what each step it's running at and how long it's taking to run each one of those steps. And then when this top bar gets all the way to green, that means it's done. So the bottom half of this is like the step. The top half is how far along it is in the overall process. So if we zoom out, you'll see here that we've already got some new stuff. So our video ran through the image cropping tool, and then it ran through this thing called preview. And what this does is going to show us every frame that we wanted from this video. So we crop this half to just the left half, and now we see every frame that it output. And if you click on each one of these little thumbnails, it'll pull up the full-size video file or the full-size image file for you. So remember how last week we had to like do all this manually, right? We had to like run an FFmpeg command to split everything into files and then run it through like each process one by one. This is basically doing this all in one step because this workflow has already been set up for us. So when I zoom out, you'll see my preview images or these frames have been sent through this thing called get image size and then also to a system called OpenPose. And OpenPose is a pose detection system. It basically it's an AI model that's been trained to look at bodies and then figure out where their skeleton structural is. So if we, you can also click on a node and then drag it around. So what we could do is I'm just going to drag this node under this one, and then we can actually kind of look at these two together, and we can kind of see that like, okay, when this, or maybe the better way to do this on this screen is side by side. So let's do it this way. So we can see that when we've got this body, this person in this position, you'll see that their skeletal structure looks like this, and that matches pretty closely. So the reason we did this is we want to use this skeletal structure to actually guide our output video. So this basically there's one process here that turns these into our pose structures. And then that pose structure gets fed into what's called a ControlNet. And this ControlNet is set up to look for OpenPose. So it looks for the specific way in which these images are generated, and then it uses that to guide the output video from there. So from this, this all gets passed into what's called the K-sampler. This is what actually does the generation work for us. And then this generates an output video for us. So we can see, here's all of our frames. And if I look here, this actually compares the, this sort of stacks the videos together. So this compares my walk cycle to the output images. Now, I can kind of see that this isn't great. There's a couple issues with this. One is like the pose itself isn't super accurate. Like I can't really pause videos in this scenario, but like you can kind of see like sometimes the arms don't really match up. Now, that could be for a couple of reasons. It could be that SDXL is not the best tool. It could be that just the strength of this output is not great. The other thing you also notice is that like heads tend to change size quite a lot. And that's because if you actually look at the video, there's no real like shape of a head, right? It's just sort of like eyes and a neck. So this model doesn't really know how head shape should be or like what a head shape should look like. So this is kind of flickery and it's not super walky. So maybe we can play with some stuff to change this. The other challenge is just like with all AI tools, there's a sense of there's a sort of randomization in these tools. So to actually improve this, you might want to just rerun it a couple times. And rerun it again, you just come down here and hit Q again, and that'll just rerun it again. If you decide in the middle of a run that you actually don't like what's happening there, you can hit the stop button here. Both these will stop. One's going to clear all your queues and one's just going to clear the latest. So you can actually you can click on this a couple times. And it's just going to output, except some weird is happening here. Why is this not? Oh, I know why. Okay. So a couple of things to know about is, and I realize I should have changed this for us. This whole setup is set up to save you as much time and be as efficient as possible. So when I ran this, I already had a bunch of settings here, like here's the random seed value, here's this other thing. Because I have not changed any of those values, it basically is not going to run until I change something. So if I change the prompt, if I change the strength of my OpenPose, if I change anything else, it will actually run again. This particular node, this K-sampler node, has this thing called a seed value, which is just a random seed, and then has a control after generate. This is set here to fixed, which means it will always use this value, which means nothing has changed in my system. If I set this to increment or decrement or randomize, and then I actually change this number, like say I just set this to like 99, if I hit Q again, this is going to run this time. And now you'll see like it skipped all the other steps because all the other steps were already loaded. It skipped everything there and just jumped right to this step. So it's going to save me time. So if ever you're finding that like things aren't running again, just double check to make sure you don't have a fixed seed and that like nothing basically change something and see if that helps it run again. Cool. And while this runs, let me send you a couple things.
I have a quick question. I accidentally pressed stop and exited. So when I reopen it, will I have to change all my settings again? Or does it save the settings that I changed?
It likely won't. It'll likely save the changes from that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, unfortunate. So no, Golan, I don't know if you noticed this, but they just added this feature where you can share an entire server setup. So, yeah, it's wonderful. So if you open that link and run Comfy with that, you will open all of my pre-installed nodes and my pre-installed models, which is going to save us a ton of time. So we have to go through a node manager and install stuff. So you can open that, and then the workflow file is this one. Okay, so you'll see this ran much quicker, and now I have sort of a different walking cycle. I would say this one's better. Still not perfect, but better. So there's a couple other things I could tweak here. Like one other thing that is available to us here is in the ControlNet section, there is a value here at the bottom called strength. This is how much of an influence the walk pose or ControlNet pose has on the output of the video file. You might think 1 is the top, but actually you can go way higher than 1. So maybe let's go to 1.5. That's going to be like, hey, put way more emphasis on this video, and hopefully that gives us a better walk cycle. Still kind of hit or miss, but we can try that. And I can already see, oh, there's my cue. So we'll hit Q again. And you also see that when that generation finished, because I set my control after generate value here to randomize, it completely changed the seed value. Okay, so now we have a different walk cycle. This one's probably more accurate of a walk cycle. The downside is we've kind of like overridden some of our image prompts, right? So I tend to notice when you crank up the strength of a ControlNet, you tend to get more illustrative images and less photographic images. But if we look here, our walk cycle is like definitely closer to what we want. It's gonna match the walk cycle. So maybe, if this were not a class where I've got 20 other steps to show you, I would maybe play with the strength settings again and maybe like dial something down. Maybe try and change the prompt a little bit so that we could keep sort of maybe a little bit more consistent of an output, right? So you can all see like the output of this is pretty crazy. This is kind of where we were last week. It gives us sort of this like look, but it's definitely very flickery. If the frame rate were any higher than 8, this would probably be like kind of chaotic looking. So we're going to look at a couple more steps to sort of like improve our outputs here. So the next thing we're going to do is I would like everyone to download this next workflow. So go ahead and download that file. And we'll come back over here. And before I do this, I'm going to go and just copy my prompt to make sure I can still use that prompt. So one thing that is helpful, you can also, if you are happy with sort of where the steps you are with this now, you can go to workflow and then save, and that'll sort of resave it. And then you can also go to workflow export. And when you hit export, that'll give you like a file name, and then you hit confirm. So let's actually call this, I'm just going to call this space. And then you can download this. So a nice thing to do is to like save your workflows. So you can always come back to them. Now, there are other ways to come back to your workflows that we'll probably talk about throughout the rest of class. But it's just good to sort of keep track of things as you make changes. Okay, so we've got that other workflow now downloaded. So let's go ahead and let me just find the path for that one. I think it's this one. So again, let's do this for Erica. Let's go through the non-Mac way. We'll go to workflow. We'll go to open. And then it should be the one that's called stop motion walk part 2. Let's click on that. We'll go to open. And you'll see this looks more or less the same, right? So we still have our walk guy here. And hopefully for everybody, it kept the walk video file. If not, you can just re-upload it. Or actually, the best way to do this is to, in this video, where it says video, if you click here, it'll actually show you all the video files you've already previously uploaded. So if your video file did not stay, you can just click on mail walk cycle animation and it should stay there as well. So you'll notice that for the most part, we have sort of the same things here. We've got, this video file, which then gets fed through an image cropping system and then gets fed to this ControlNet. And then we've got, our outputs, we've got our video outputs, that sort of thing. There's one new section, which is this, which I didn't name, I should name. And that feeds all the way back to this other thing, which is a new input. This is a load image. So let's say we have a style image that we want our output to look like. We can now upload a style output and have it match, like sort of have it influence the output of our images. This is really nice because, again, I've said I don't like text prompting. I kind of hate text prompting. It's really frustrating. If I already have an image that I know I want it to look like, it'd be nice just to be able to use that as a reference. What this will allow us to do is actually upload a image as a reference photo and essentially apply that style to the output of the image. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna paste in, I had already copied my prompt, so I'm gonna paste my prompt back in. So it's a guy in a spacesuit. So what I wanna do is I wanna go and find an image of someone walking in space. It's gonna go to images, of course, Quincy, why is it on? Yeah, that's why. So I've got a couple different images here. You know what, this one looks like a really good example. The one thing I'll probably need to do is, it's helpful if your image reference is as close to your output as possible. So what I would probably do is, as I look through these, I might look for someone who's walking, but a profile view, right? Because if I upload something that's kind of a face view, it's going to try to like mash that face into that same view. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to download or grab this image. It's an iStock image. That's okay if it's kind of small. Let me just go open a new. Is that the right one? That's not the right one. That's the one I wanted. So go to open a new tab. Actually, I want to open the image in new tab, open image in new tab. And I want to just sort of like, the other thing to know about these references images is better if they're square. If you don't have a square image, it gets kind of messy. That's like a whole like additional thing for this class. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to like sort of screen grab this, and I'm going to screen grab it to like what I hope is a square shape. So I'll just probably like do something like that and kind of see that's almost square. That's probably close enough. So it's going to get downloaded to my desktop. And the last thing I want to do is, because of my person's walking left to right, I kind of want to flip this image. So I'm just going to flip this image in my tools here real quick. Hit save on that. And then what I'll do is in Run Comfy, I'll come down to the section that says load image, and I'm going to hit upload, and I'm going to upload my screenshot. Okay, cool. Now this is going to work exactly the same way. I've already put in my prompts, and all I've done here is I've added this image. And what hopefully will happen, although, you know, maybe one thing I should do is just make sure my prompt matches this. So there we go. That's weird. Okay, cool. So a man in a spacesuit walking on the moon, 4K high quality photograph. The man's helmet is, let's just call it bright silver instead. And the moon is a cool blue color. Okay, I think that's pretty close. So what we can do now is we'll hit key when we'll run this. This should still run pretty quickly because we've already got the same model set up, but we're going to see there's this other thing called IP adapter. And this is basically the thing that allows us to generate our styles. So we hit Q. You'll see it reruns our output. Oh, I've left that at 50, so we should change that back to 25. But let's see how long this actually takes. Actually, you know what? I am going to run that. I'm going to set that back to 25. So I'm just going to cancel that. And I'm going to set our frames back to 25, which should save us a little bit of time. Come back here, we'll hit Q. I recognize not everybody has an image yet, maybe to match their output. We're going to take a break in like 5 minutes. So during that time, you can go ahead and download your finest style image you like. Maybe play with your prompts a little bit, and then we'll take a little break and we'll come back and pick up from where we are here. So this is now running through this, what's called IP adapter. IP adapter is essentially a way to do, the IP stands for image prompt. So basically allows you to basically prompt from an image, which is really nice. And again, much nicer than having to figure out all the right keywords for these things. Any questions while I let this run?
Yeah, how often do you use ComfyUI?
I use it quite frequently these days. For anything that I'm doing where I have a really complicated mishmash of tools, I'm generally using ComfyUI. The nice thing about this is that to actually do this, to combine like a general image, a text to image model plus a ControlNet plus an IP adapter in any other program is really hard. Like you either have to write custom code to sort of combine things. Like basically what's kind of really wonderful about these tools is like these are 3 different open source companies that were able to sort of merge things together with. There are very few companies that allow you this level of flexibility in their own tools. And like, as we'll see when we get to like the end of this class, like there's some really crazy shit you can do by combining like a ton of different things together. And that's where like, you know, I built all this stuff like one step at a time, right? So the first thing that we saw, like I built that by itself. Then I added the IP adapter into it. Then I add additional things to it. Then I add additional things to that. So like sometimes people will see the final workflow. Like if I showed you the final workflow that we made, that we're going to make in the final end of this class, as the first thing to show you, you would freak out. You'd be like, how the hell do I use this thing? It's crazy. It's too weird. But kind of this like stepped up, built up process is actually quite helpful. Erica?
Got it.
Yeah, I guess it would be, is there a way to know or have a list of for ComfyUI, like when would you want, like what is an IP adapter, like what is a I was watching one of your other tutorials on ComfyUI, and you did explain sort of what a ControlNet was and things like that, but is there sort of like a place where I could find a list of these things that explains it all?
There isn't, and that's kind of the big challenge of ComfyUI is a lot of it is sort of like the community knows, but like no one has, like there are very few official documentation of a lot of these tools. The company that actually makes ComfyUI only very recently became an actual official company. It was sort of a side project for a long time, and they're starting to do a better job of documenting stuff and making things easier to grab. But like the reality is it's quite hard to figure out where all these nodes work. This is kind of where like some of it comes through just awareness in the machine learning world. Some of it comes through like watching tutorials on how other people make stuff in ComfyUI. Like every time I watch tutorials how someone did something in ComfyUI, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that node existed. Like I didn't even know you could do something like that. So it's a lot of it's just like word of mouth kind of stuff, which is why it's so hard for people to use and why a lot of people just resort to like downloading someone else's workflow and like kind of blindly running it and praying it works, which is kind of the challenge of these tools.
So if I was to do a search on IP adapter, would I find what it's, or would I like just not, I'd be sent on some crazy trail of something that made that wasn't relevant, or
A
how
little bit of
easy is
both.
it?
A little bit
Sorry,
of both,
what?
but I will say I have a video on, I have a whole week essentially on IP adapter. And the person who made the IP adapter nodes actually has a very good YouTube channel where they kind of explain how it all works. It gets a little like science heavy, math heavy. But in general, like IP adapter is probably one of the few nodes that actually has quite a good amount of documentation around it.
Okay, thank you.
Everything else is a little messy, unfortunately. Okay, cool. So let's check out our video here. So definitely still glitchy, but like the look of it is much more consistent, right? We get a little bit more of that stop motion look. But I would say overall, this looks better than the previous version, which were like the lighting kept changing, like other things kept changing. So just with this one sort of additional feature, we have a little bit more of a consistency here. And what we're going to do next is actually like make it more consistent and more smooth. And usually the best way to do that is actually like, I didn't do this in this one, but let me show you what we could do. And I'll save out a new version of this. So we've got this available to us. So when this goes through this animation setup, the animation is just literally animating a bunch of frames. It's just like an FFmpeg script that basically like converts all this back to our video. But it actually starts out as just a series of images. So if I wanted to look at just those images, what I could do here is I could click on this image button here and then hit Shift Control and then let go. And it's going to offer a bunch of options for nodes to add. So you could add the preview image node. The other way to add a node is just in this canvas area, like in the gridded area. If you double click, you can also get a node. So you could go through preview image. There's a little search function here. So if you know you're looking for something in particular, like I'm often looking for the concatenate node, you can type that in and it'll kind of pop up. But for us, we're going to look at the preview image node.
Is your screen shared?
Is my screen shared? Yes, it should be shared.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing and reshare and see if that helps. Are you seeing it now?
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool. Fun with Zoom. Okay, so so there's two ways to sort of add a node. One is to drag out from here and then do the shift control thing. The other way to do would just be like add a node loose here and then connect it. So you'll see there's a blue dot here and a blue dot here. You basically drag the blue dots to connect each other. And now there's no way to sort of like reverse this. We're basically like, hey, I have this video. Can we put it back in the preview images? No real way to like sort of like Comfy only works sort of one direction. There's no way to sort of like, hey, I take this video and like kind of pull it apart again. The only really way to do this is to like re-queue everything. So we're just going to re-queue this. We'll hit queue again. This will take, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. Actually, way shorter than that. Oh, because my seed is fixed. Oh, okay, that actually helped out. That helped me in my favor. That was in my favor this time. But you'll see that in this preview image node, if I open this, whoops. But again, you can kind of hover over the right-hand corner until you see that arrow. You can drag this out and make it a little bit bigger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm just going to grab maybe my favorite image of this. So let's say kind of like this image. I think this one is kind of my favorite. I want to use this as sort of my reference image. Now, there's two things you could do. One is you could feed this back into that style reference and hope that it picks up more of the overall structure. But actually, what we're going to do after our break is we're going to look at using this image to do what's called denoising or image-to-image process. So what we did last week was actually kind of like that process, right? We fed it images from our video into the system and kind of painted over it. We're going to do that same process. We're going to use this exact image to kind of guide or keep some of our shapes here. So the easiest way to get an image out of the system, it does get saved in your assets folder, but it's kind of a mess to find everything. But any image you see here, you can also right click on and you can go to save image. And it's just going to say like, hey, where you want to save this? It's going to give it a weird name and some other things here. Like you could save this as like, let's just call it image to image, because that is a totally reasonable file name. And we'll save that. So what I would recommend we do, let's take a little break. We'll come back at like 9:15. Take a break, do whatever you want to do. But if you have a little bit of time, maybe rerun this a couple times, maybe change out your style image. Maybe play with your prompt a little bit and see if you get some results you like. And then if you can add that preview image node and then find an image that you like from your output. So also if you click on one, you're like, I don't really like that one. There's a little X up here. You can click on that. That takes you back to your grid. Maybe just find one image you kind of want to use as your overall sort of structure. So I kind of like this one. Kind of like them when the moon is like clearly defined in the background with that harsh horizon line. Whatever you're prompting, whatever you're doing, like let's just find an image you like, and then again, right click on it and hit save image and just save it to your desktop. What we're going to do when we come back is we'll look at the next step of this workflow, which will use this image to sort of help guide our output. Sound good? Cool. All right, I'll see everyone in 9 minutes.
Hi, Derek.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, sorry to bug you.
No, of course.
I don't know if you want to pause the recording or whatever.
Yeah, let me pause it real quick. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, sorry.
I just have a question, Derek.
Yeah,
So
please.
if I wanted to, I uploaded a new image, a new style reference, and I hit queue, but then I'm like, I want to try another image reference. Do I have to wait until the queue is done before I upload the next artwork?
You can,
on
that's a great
track?
question. You can upload the image and then hit queue again. So the queue is literally a queue. Like you can basically like set up a whole system of like a bunch of them and they'll just keep running one by one. Now, the thing is, you won't really see it preview as it skips to the next one.
Yeah.
So maybe let's pause here for a second and talk about how we could download these assets. So these assets, if you look here in this, in these nodes, let me make this a bit wider so it's easier to read. You'll see there's a file name prefix, right? So file name prefix. You'll see that I have set that, and I think everyone else this should import for you as well, is it imports into SMAI, which is stop motion AI, and then /, and then it gives you this file name, and then it'll add like a number to the end of it. So if you want to download these files, you can go to assets. So click here on the assets folder on the right-hand side. You'll double click on the ComfyUI. You'll double click onto output. And then I've got a ton of stuff in here. This is basically like all my working files. But if you scroll down, you should see, or maybe you don't need to scroll down, you should see a folder called SMAI. And then when you double click on that, you'll see in there are a bunch of outputs. You probably have maybe 3 or 4. I have like 30 because I've been playing with this tool a lot. And you want the stop motion dash walk 1. So you should find there is an MP4 file, there is a PNG file, and then there is also, should be somewhere. Oh, okay. I guess they're kind of like mixed up a little bit. You'll see there's a combined file. So there's a combined.mp4 and a combined.png. So the video files are the MP4 files, and then the PNG files are actually the workflows themselves. So if you find one that you like, definitely save down the PNG file. So for example, the way to download these is to click on the file and go to the little kebab menu up here, and you can go to download. If you want to download, I think you can select more than one. If you want to download multiple files, you can select a bunch of them and go download. But let me show you this. So when you download the PNG file, it's just going to look like your image, which is kind of what the reference is. But if I were to actually open this in a program that reads metadata, so there's this tool that I use called Media Info. Inside of this file, if I click on this little guy here, you'll see there's like all this stuff stuck into this thing called prompts. This is literally your workflow. If you want to go back to this workflow, what you could do, let me just save this really quickly. You can take this image and drag it back into ComfyUI, and it's going to reload with the workflow that you use to make that image or to make that video file. So these are very helpful in that you can always go back to your previous example. If you were like, I got too far along, I just want to go back to this one and start over. You can load that in and do that from that direction. Mine's kind of a mess here because this is where we're going to head to eventually in this class. I just download that. So those PNG files are actually quite helpful because they include the workflow metadata, and then you can use them to reload your workflow if you get lost.
Derek, in the new interface, where did the feature go that could take the entire desktop and save it as a PNG with the workflow embedded? Is that under someplace that's been moved?
That's a great question. I don't know that it even exists anymore.
You
I
know
just
what?
always save it as
You
just
know what I'm talking about, though, right? It used to be you could right click on the desktop and then save the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know where that went off to be honest.
All right, thanks.
That's to look around. I always just work out the PNGs, but it is nice when it like can save out an image of your workflow. Yeah. Okay, let's before we get too far along here, let's get to our next step. So the next step is we'll do part 3. And we're going to copy the link to this one, share this in the chat with everybody. Cool, so there you go. So there is the next workflow. I'll download this for myself. And obviously, like all of these workflows are kind of adding up here. If you want to sort of clean up your tabs here, you can just click on the X button, and they'll kind of ask you like, hey, do you want to save these? It's up to you if you want to save them. I sometimes just hit no, just like clean up my space a little bit. Okay, so I started here. So now I want to go back to, oh, and also I just want to make sure that everyone has saved out an image that they like from their previews, just because this is going to be important for this next step. And if you lose it, it can just kind of be a pain in the ass to get back to. So make sure you have saved out one of these images before we move on. So now I'm going to go to workflow open, and I'm going to open up stop motion walk part 3. And now here again, nothing has really been added except this one additional image. So if I zoom in here, you'll see that there is the style image, which still references what our style output is. So let me go ahead and just upload this with the right images that I want. So the style image still determines the stylistic output, but there's this base animation image. And this is what we want to update with our image that we generated from our outputs. So in this, I'm going to upload this one, which is I called image to image image. So what does this guy do? So this image feeds into, if you kind of track where the little spaghetti strap is going, the spaghetti line goes all the way over to, oh, where'd it go? Oh, it went to this latent image. Okay, sorry. So it goes to this thing called a VE encode. VE encode basically converts our image back to something that our model can read as a bunch of numbers essentially. And then we're repeating that file the number of times we want from here. So let me turn this back to 25. And then we're feeding that image into our what's called the K-sampler, which is generating as a latent image. And then you'll see, if you look previously at our other workflows, you'll see the denoise was set to 1.0. By setting it to something smaller than that, like 0.8 or 0.85, what we're doing is we're saying, take our base image. So take this image here and add, like 85% of the noise, but not all the noise, not 100% of the noise. So this is going to then basically do is it's going to say, like, use kind of the colors and the structure of this image to modify our outputs. So the hope is that we get our stylistic image, and then we also get something that looks kind of like this, but with our walk cycle on top of it. So just a reminder, sorry, I might have done that too quickly. Make sure you set this value here to 25. Again, that way it doesn't take us too long. I might have lost my prompt. Let me see if I can get it back. Yep, I lost my prompt. Where is this? Oh, it's over here. Thankfully, I didn't delete all my tabs. So I can come back over here and I can grab my prompt from here. Let me make sure I had my ControlNet strength a little bit higher. And let's go ahead and run this. So see, I have now added my preview image as well. So this will spit out a bunch of images for us. I think we're good. So let's hit Q.
Derek, can you say again how to capture the preview image?
Yes. So let's just say you have your preview images. What you can do is you have the grid of images. If you click on the one you like the most, it'll open up larger, and then you can right click onto that image. And then go to save image.
Okay, great.
Anything that's in a node called preview does not get saved to your assets. So there are preview nodes, and then there are save nodes. So see how these don't say it, but if I hadn't renamed them, it would say save animation or save VHS file. So anything that has a save is going to get saved to your assets. Anything called preview is just going to be visible for you to see in the workflow. So because we save out all those frames, we don't really want them most of the time. There is a save image node as well. And you could save out all those images if you wanted them, just as the raw images. But in this case, I don't really want the raw images. I just want the animation. So for that use, I'm only using the preview image node. And now we'll see here, like, basically our image definitely feels smoother, right? We're seeing a lot less crazy differences between our outputs, but I'll also kind of say, like, now my walk is a little screwed up. So this is kind of where we have to kind of find the right balance between, like, having a smoother animation and having a nice walking cycle. So what I could do is maybe I want to play with my strength here. So maybe we'll turn our strength here back to 1.5. The other thing you could do is in the K-sampler, you could turn this, make this value higher. So 0.9, which would mean there's going to be a little bit more difference from image to image. But the hope is that by adding more noise, we get to keep a little bit more of that. We can change more of the image and get a better walk cycle out of it. The other thing is we could try making this a little bit looser, or sorry, like lessening this number means you're going to have that base image is going to have more of an influence over the overall image. So we might have a walk cycle make it a little bit less walk because of how the denoising process works. Because remember, we take a look at our image here, we'll see there are already legs here. There's already a walk sort of being influenced in this image. Now, when we add noise to it, we kind of are blurring a lot of it. And hopefully the idea is we can add the walk over top of it and we won't like lose it. But there's always sort of this balance here between like how much of this can we keep versus how much should we not keep. There are other things we could do here, like we could paint in something very basic and try to keep that structure. There's a lot of different things we could do. And in fact, I think the very last step, there's even something different we could do. which would be to actually like sort of use more than just the pose structure, but to use like a depth mask or something else there. So this is kind of the challenge of these tools is like you can get started pretty well, but then like fine tuning, you'll spend like 20% of your time getting close to it, and then 80% of your time like dialing in the right settings and getting the right seed values and those sort of things. So this is kind of the challenge of these tools, but at least with Comfy, you can kind of see what you're changing and see what values you're making changes to, and then actually sort of visualize what the results are, and then you can kind of continue to tweak things as you go. And I like this sort of stacking animation is very nice because it allows you to sort of see sort of what the pose should look like and then what your outputs are. So this is, again, this is something you couldn't really do. If we tried to do this in last week's like Eden tools, it'd be like a bunch of steps for me to sort of match all of our images back up. It would be a lot of work. This is like literally adding like this one node and then passing both sets of images to it, and then it figures out like how to generate it. It's just really nice. And this is kind of the power of Comfy is like, I don't need to go and figure out how to do all that stuff myself. Someone has probably made a node, and as long as I figure out what the name of that node is, or like figure out what I need to build, like this will work for me. But how many of you would have guessed that the way to stack two videos together is called the image concatenate node? You might, if you know code, you might know that that's what to call it. But like, this should be called video stack or image stack, right? Like the names of these things are like always a little weird for what you're actually looking for. Okay, so my walk is a little stronger. The images are a little bit more flickery. So you kind of have to find that happy balance between like, if I were to do this with video, I would actually get like a nice smooth video output. The goal of this was to get something that is a little bit more of this stop motion kind of flickery look. Now there's some other issues with like the shape of the guy's body is kind of changing. It's like scale is kind of weird, but this is kind of I like this look for these videos. But to each their own, right? So like there are other ways, and we'll look at some additional ways to actually sort of add additional stuff to these things. So at this point, like I would quite often stop here. Like this would be the end of my animation. One thing you'll notice is that this only generates 25 frames for us. Once I got all the settings dialed in and liked them, there would be a way to add, because of how this video works, I could add one more loop to it. I could change this to 50. And then I could run this again and I would get like a double length video. Past that, you need to kind of do some weird stuff like actually like repeating these batches. And this is kind of the challenge is like there are ways within these nodes to repeat batches more than once. But it gets kind of messy. I'd have to like, this is where I would probably spend like an hour kind of tweaking things to get that to work for me. So in this class, we're only going to get at most 50 frames, which I guess at 8 frames a second is actually not that bad. It's like an 8-second loop. So Lisa, your question around how do I Google search this? This is crazy. It's just like there is no real good way to do this, unfortunately. You're welcome to ask me. Like I am always happy to help people with Comfy if I can, but I don't always know either. I have kind of learned from just like so as I mentioned, like the nice thing about Run Comfy is if you go to Run ComfyUI. So also the other thing I should mention is you can only run one of these machines at a time. So if you are like, oh, I want to do this and another one, both run Comfy, you can't really do that. You got to run one machine at a time. But the cool thing about Run Comfy that is actually quite different than ComfyUI itself is Run Comfy comes with all of these workflows already pre-made for you. So if you see something, you're like, oh, I like that. I want to figure out how to make that or how I can leverage that. Assuming you're not running another machine, you can run one of these workflows and it'll open and you can kind of see what someone else does. And this is super helpful because you will learn a lot about how other people make their workflows by looking at how someone made one of these. And everyone kind of has their own style. It's like programming or like, I don't know, if you ever design in Figma, it's like some people are very clean about their Figma stuff. Other people are very, very messy. And like each one of these workflows are often made by different creators and they will often have different styles for them. So I would definitely encourage people if you've got some time to go through these. And quite honestly, this is how most people use Comfy. Most people do not build their own workflows. most people go through someone else's workflow and like kind of just like jam on some buttons until it works for them. The majority of people who are like, I use Comfy do not know how to make their own workflows. Like it's kind of a unique skill for people that know how to make their own workflows. And that's kind of why, like for this class, I'm just giving you the workflows and you can kind of tweak them here and there. But like most people are not building them from scratch. Like that class I taught last week or the class I taught last summer is more or less kind of from nothing to building up to like some pretty complicated workflows. But that's not to say like I would not consider myself a Comfy expert. There are people who spend every hour of every day using Comfy, and they definitely know way more than I do, but I know enough to like sort of build some of these basic workflows based on what I've done in the past. But I definitely encourage you to look through these things. Some of them work well, some of them don't. Like this is kind of the fun of these AI tools is like they often like they cherry pick the results and it looks great, but then you like go and look at it, you're like, actually, that doesn't look good at all in 90% of the use cases. So just beware of that. Okay, cool. Let's go back to Run Comfy. And I should have, yeah, I've got a longer video now. So I've got like this now does 50 frames instead of 25. So that's it. Okay. I've got, oh, cool. We've got half an hour. So I've got one more crazy step. So we're gonna take a big leap to like a whole new thing. But keep this in mind because at least half of this workflow is what we're gonna do in the next step. Let me just save this out real quick. So workflow, save, space. Okay, so I think this is the last for the week. Let me just see what I got here. Yeah, we're just gonna skip we're gonna skip half a step. But that's okay. So let me copy this link for everybody. Share copy link. Paste that in. And let's go ahead and load in this workflow.
I've just made the most horrifying thing ever.
It's
And I
the
kind
fun
of like it.
tools. Feel free to post in our Slack. I love looking at the worst things ever. All right, so now we're going to open part 5. So we'll go to workflow, open, and then we'll do part 5. And don't freak out because there's a lot more stuff here. It's actually also slightly better organized. So basically everything that we just did is in this big blue box. The nice thing about Comfy is it also has, it's not the most organized thing, but there are ways to make things more organized. You can wrap stuff in what's called groups. So this group, if I zoom in here, you'll see this group is called walk cycle. This is literally everything that we just did. It's using on mine, it's using some older images or some stuff I made for some other demos. But essentially, this is the entire workflow that we did before. Now, what we add here, let's actually set this up. Let me just copy some stuff over from my previous example. Let me set this to 25. Yep, set to 25. Let me paste in my prompts. Let me paste in my images here from my files. So this one is image to image, image. And this one is, that's a screenshot. Where is it? Oh boy. Here we go, that one. I tend to do the worst thing ever, which is I just always re-upload the same images over and over again. And then you've got like 50 copies of the same file in here. So if you can, clicking on the image name allows you to pull back all the stuff you've already uploaded. So if you can do that, it's probably a little bit cleaner. For me, it's a little bit messier. So what we're going to do here is, the other cool thing is there's this other tool here that is called the Fast Groups Bypasser. So what happens is like these flows get quite complicated and you might be like, well, I only want to play with one section of my flow before I jump to the next thing. And Comfy doesn't really by default work like that. Comfy wants to just do everything in one pass and then be done. The way to sort of turn stuff on and off is what's called bypassing. And prior to some of these new tools existing, the way to bypass stuff was to go to every single node and click and like bypass every node individually. Someone by the name of RG3 or like whoever their account is made this really nice node, which is called Fast Groups Bypasser, which means you can bypass anything in a group at a time. So in this case, if I wanted to play with something else besides my walk cycle, the section that says enable walk cycle, you set this to no, and then it bypasses everything in that group. So if I want to play with just my animated background, I could turn my animated background on. And this is nice because if you leave all this stuff on, Comfy might take like twice as long to generate this stuff. So by bypassing, you're turning things off and it's going to save you some time. So this is set up, there's no, this is a nicer tool, but it could be better, which is that there's no like UI to separate things. So what I've kind of done here is if you zoom out, I've got three big groups, and those are all named in uppercase. So this is walk cycle, animated background, and video composite. Don't ask me why this isn't ordered correctly. There's no way for me to order this. It is what it is. So what we can do to start off is turn off our video composite and turn off our animated background. And then if you set all of your settings, the exact same thing you had in the part 3 section, and then hit Q, we should get back something that is basically the same video we had before. Oops, actually, I left on one thing I didn't want to leave on. So you know how I mentioned that one of the challenges of the pose structure is there isn't really like full body detail in that, right? You just get the skeleton structure. There is another control net called the depth control net, or like a depth system. And this is actually what's running right now. This is new. I actually will want to turn this off, and I'll show you how to turn it off in just a second. But you'll see that this gives you poses that are body poses. And this gives you sort of more than just the skeleton, it gives you sort of outlines and shapes. Now, for my particular model or my particular output, because I have a spaceman who's got like a big helmet on and a big bulky suit, this is actually not that good for me because it's going to kind of compress everything down into like these body poses. We'll take a look at what actually happens here. If you had like a person and you were prompting for like a man or a woman and you kind of wanted them to have a better shape to them, this might be a better way to do that. But because I added a suit to this guy, it's going to kind of make my suit look weird. So there's two ways we could do this. I could turn this off completely, or I could turn the strength of this down quite a bit. And we'll let this run, and then we'll see what happens, and I can turn it off.
Derek, is there a conditioner that uses a mask rather than a depth image? Because with this particular input video, it'd be really easy to get a mask by thresholding on white, and depth is less meaningful for this particular image, it seems to me.
There isn't. There should be. You know, all these control nets, there are different control nets. Some are, you know, you might be able to get it with like the canny one. Yeah, it's a lot of the control nets are not always perfectly suited. There are other ways to get a mask out of this thing and use that as some sort of influence. It's actually what we're going to look at with this particular tool right now, is to generate a mask or to like background remove. But there's no control net that's purely a mask. There probably should be, but there isn't one right now. One note, you'll see this is taking a little bit longer to run. The more control nets you add and the more IP adapters you add, the longer it takes for this stuff to run. So you'll see some people that stack like 5 control nets together and they're all like have a strength of like 0.1. And it's like that thing must take like, you know, a couple minutes per image to generate the output, which is not ideal. But some people really like that as an effect, or like they wanted to be able to control every little minute detail with this. So if I zoom in here, you'll see my spaceman has like a, I don't know, a slight, like it just kind of fucks up the spacesuit. And that's because that depth is really like shrinking where the image can actually be generated. So what I probably want to do is turn that off. And also you'll see I've got this step here where we're going to generate background removal. So this is actually removing the background. There's a really cool set of AI models now that exist that basically remove backgrounds. So they know where people are. And then you can remove the backgrounds from them. So let me just rerun this without the depth tool. So there's 2 options here. For this depth, I could turn the strength really far down. Like I'd say like 0.1. Honestly, with this, I don't even want that depth map to really kind of affect anything at all. So the better way to do this would be to turn this off. And the way to turn this off would be to go over to my little bypasser here. And you'll see one of these is called the walk cycle depth control net. So if I turn that off, you'll see it actually grays out these nodes. So we'll run this again. just like I kind of mentioned last week, ideally, if this weren't a 2-hour class, I would make us go through generating single images, figuring out all our parameters, and then scaling that up to video. That's kind of what we did last week, right? We played around in Eden first, generated a single image. Once we got the parameters set up, then we kind of copy those over to the video. That would still be an ideal scenario for us, because generating images one at a time would be nice. If you do just want to generate one image at a time, you can set this frame count value here to 1, and that'll just generate one image. The reason you would want to do that is just going to save you time. Again, all this stuff takes time. You know, to generate 25 frames takes 25 times longer than 1 frame. So if you're just kind of playing with prompts and want to figure out what prompts work well, you want to kind of start with one image. Once you've got that figured out, then you want to scale up to 25. Then you want to add all these pieces. So like, you know, we kind of already done that in class before, so I didn't want to make us go through that again and kind of lose time there. But I do think if this were my project, I would start, and I wanted to get the right prompts, I would start with 1 frame, kind of dial in my settings there, and then like expand it to 12, make sure that works, expand it to 25, make sure that works, then expand it to all the frames I want to generate at once. So I've turned off my depth system, and now you can see already my space guys look a little more spacey, right? They've got that big helmet. And you'll see here as well is this is getting passed to this background removal system. And what it's doing is removing my background from my images. And these aren't perfect, right? You'll see here, like, it's kind of capturing some of that shadow. It's kind of getting some other stuff here. But this is still better than me having to do it manually, right? Manually rotoscoping this would take me forever. So this is kind of good. What I've got then is my output. This is my video with the moon in the background. And this is my walk cycle. This is my walk cycle with the background removed. So what this tool allows me to do is it allows me to composite a walk cycle with a background animation and then combine them over top of each other, right? Like that would be a very traditional animation process. You put your walk cycle on like clear acetate, and then you animate the background separately from that. So you might have like a scrolling background animation, and then your walk cycle repeats over and over again over top of stuff. So what I thought we would do is we could just kind of play with, we've got this already kind of set up, right? So you can use your previously existing animation setups from part 3, and then we can add this animation background. So for this animation background, what we'll do is we'll turn these on. So come on here, we'll go and we'll turn animated background on, and then we'll turn video composite on. I'm gonna leave the depth control net off because that's clearly not working right for my model or my output. So let's go ahead and generate an animation here. So this is kind of the same thing. Basically what we're doing is we're going to generate an animation. This uses a tool called Animate Diff, which is like an animation library. It basically generates animations. Whereas that top part is more that stop motion, right? We're generating every frame one by one. Whereas this Animate Diff model actually takes in my images and then does like an interpolation between them. So it'll actually generate more of a smoother motion. And maybe the effect of this will kind of look nice. So let's just say moon surface, Earth in black of space background. Let's so this also has a style image. So if you have something you want like more stylistically to upload, you could as well. Let's actually, I don't know, let's see if there's well, actually, let's just use our same image. So let me go and select my image to image. I'm unsure if my space guy is going to kind of show up here. So actually, let's just do this. Let's go and search for an image of the moon. This is kind of cool. Let's use this one. So we'll grab this one. Back over here and we'll upload that image. Now I should also add, I'm using an Animate Diff LoRa, which is like a plugin essentially that this will allow me to pan to the right. This is something that specifically there are these what's called motion LoRas that allow you to control the way the motion works. By default, Animate Diff motion is kind of like fluid, like kind of tries to animate within the space. But there are these things called LoRas that allow you to do pan right or pan left. So I think I have, yeah, I've got pan right, pan left, tilt down, tilt up, zoom in, zoom out. So depending on what your animation is doing, you might want to choose a different one of these. Because I've got this guy in a walk cycle from a profile view, it kind of makes sense to just use a pan right or a pan left. So for this, we can now run this. I think that's everything I wanted to do. So this is going to generate a little animation. If you wanted to test out your animations, actually, let's do this. If you want to test out your animations in a faster sort of setting, what you might want to do is turn off your walk cycle, right? Because it takes a little bit of time to generate your walk cycle. So I'm going to generate your background, figure out the background prompt, that sort of thing, and then add things back on. So let's do this. So let's turn off our walk cycle here. And we'll turn off the video composites. We're not going to composite anything together. And we just want the animated background. Now this might throw an error. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so the reason this is working doesn't work is because I have a value that's being set here in my walk cycle that is turned off now. So the way to fix this is to pull this out of the group. This is so hacky, but I love these. I love that this is how you have to do stuff. So, okay, so see how when I had all this in the group, this was getting turned off. This is my frame counter. This is how many frames I'm going to generate for my video. Because it was in the group and it was getting bypassed. So now I just pull it out of the group and now I can bypass everything else. So now if I run this, yep, that'll run. Okay. I'll save this out again for everybody. So we've got it. And let me do that now. Save. I'm going to set this to fixed. Doesn't matter. I don't know. I'm kind of just like, I'm throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks at this point, and that'll be fine for this generation. So just a reminder, what we're doing is we're generating a motion of the moon in the background separately from the walk cycle, which will hopefully also kind of help the animation feel a bit smoother. If we looked at the animation here, see how because the background's kind of flickering and changing at all times, it's kind of like creating more chaos than we want, right? So we kind of just want our walk guy to sort of do his walking thing and then have the background of our motion piece be like a little bit smoother. And this is, again, like this is a very traditional sort of technique that you would see animators do. Like in analog animation, you would paint your walk cycle on sheets of acetate, and you would take a shot of each one of those one step at a time. And then you would have like a painted scroll at the back of this, and you would kind of like animate the scroll as you take each scene. So we're kind of taking a bunch of old techniques and kind of bringing them back together where you've got different layers that you can sort of animate separately from each other, which is really nice and kind of powerful. And again, would be a huge headache in something like Eden. But in Comfy, like Comfy is kind of set up to do this. Now it's going to take like 5 or 10 minutes for me to render every one of these videos. And realistically, if you were an animator, you would prefer to just like download this video and download the other video and bring in After Effects. You can probably do more controls of stuff. Like this is not going to give you After Effects controls, but this will give you enough control to like generate some fun animations without needing other tools. And that's really the power of Comfy. And I'm sure someday soon, someone will basically build in like keyframing and other stuff into Comfy. It'll have a terrible interface, but it'll work. And that's kind of what's cool about these tools is like they're ever evolving and ever changing. But they are definitely like kind of like a mess. Actually, look at this. This already didn't do what I wanted to do. I'm now getting like a weird, why didn't I get a better image of this? Maybe my IP adapters to, here we go. Okay, cool. So that's what the difference is. So for IP adapter, there's a bunch of settings here. I'm going to set my my weight to like 1.2. And then the weight type here is what's called a style transfer. That was because I was throwing up like a very weird image and doing style transfer to it. What I actually want to do is I want to click on weight type and I want to do composition. Yeah. So the goal of this is to hopefully keep this composition rather than just applying style to this. So now we can, let's just, I'm gonna one-shot this and just hope for the best, because we are almost at the end of class. I'm gonna turn all this stuff back on. You'll notice when you turn this all back on, it turns on the depth control net again. So we're gonna turn that off. And we're gonna turn our video composite back on. So I'm gonna let this run. It might take 5 to 10 minutes to generate this animation. Let's just sort of see. So I'll hit Q. And we'll just have to sort of see how long this takes. But you can start to see the power of these tools because you can start to do things in different places, combine stuff, separate stuff. Like, again, all of these models are open source models, but they're made by like 10 different people. So the chances of someone having a tool that like outside of ComfyUI that does all this stuff for you is pretty rare. So the ability to like do all of this in Comfy and merge different people's models and merge different people's tools together is really, really powerful. But I imagine that if I had sent everyone this workflow, like when we started class, you all would just be like, what is this? How do I use this thing, right? So it is really helpful to sort of start at like the bare minimum or like the basics and then sort of build up from there. And that's kind of why I think like when people get into Comfy, they want to jump to the craziest thing first. And then they open up a workflow and they're like, whoa, I don't even know how this works, but like, I guess there's an input here. So I'm gonna put in a prompt and get something out of it. And then when you say like, well, how did you make that? And they're like, I don't know. This workflow did it for me, right? So like, this is kind of the challenge of Comfy is you can do a lot of stuff really crazy, like really, really crazy concepts, but like you kind of have to build up from there. It's like programming, right? Like you can't just write like all the code at once. You have to write little blocks at a time.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I've been able to run. Oh. Be able to run the first half, the walk cycle.
Yep.
And then it stopped. Is there another kind of thing I have to press to get the animated background and the video
Is
composite
it grayed
running?
out? Is it all purple blocks? Like, see how this one's purple? Does it look like
Hold
purple
on.
blocks?
No,
No.
no, I have all in the fast groups. I have everything enabled except for the walk cycle depth control net.
There are a couple potential things. One is we could have maxed out the VRAM. Because I'm using the extra large, it's possible that like I'm able to generate animations using all these various tools thrown together. Is anything?
Yeah, I'm actually on medium.
Yeah, that might be why. You might need to
Okay.
be on the large or extra large, which I know is more expensive, but basically when you're doing really crazy workflows like this, like with 4 or 5 different models all running, you need a lot of VRAM to make that happen. So yeah, you could always, you know, again, like later this week, just restart it in extra large and see if that does it. You don't have any green bars at the top, right?
Sorry, say it again.
You don't have this green bar still running at the top at all?
Yeah, it's running now because I tried it again.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but I'm still in the K sampler in the walk
Okay.
cycle that's where I'm at.
See if you get it again. It might just be that, yeah, we've maxed out the VRAM. I think the medium is like 16 gigabytes, which is probably too small. But let's just see. Let's see if it runs again.
Derek, I just put some of my examples in the line.
Oh, cool. Great.
I'd be curious to know what you think any parameters I could or should adjust. They're obviously very abstract.
Yeah. I mean, is the abstract what you want? Actually, I kind of like it in motion.
Yeah.
I think what I would probably look at is I'd probably look at the denoising. So when you have this in that part 3 section, we've got that base animation image.
Yeah.
Take maybe your favorite frame
Okay.
from that and feed that in. So like if you really like I don't know, one of these frames here, like say you really like this frame and you like the colors of this frame, if you feed in this back in and set your denoise value to like something like 0.8 or 0.75, and that's happens here at denoise. We set it at like 0.7 or 0.75, 0.8, maybe even 0.7. What it'll do is it'll keep more of the colors from this input image, and then it'll kind of make everything a little bit more consistent.
Oh,
I actually
cool.
quite like the look of this. I mean, again, I like stuff that like feels very flickery. So I quite like this, but yeah, if you want to smooth it out a little bit more, that's usually what I recommend.
Cool. Awesome. I really like the background that it created. It's very
the background's quite nice. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
And then the transparent. It's
So this is probably just a challenge with like that background model is not used to seeing painted people, right?
totally.
So that's where, some of these models fall short because they have certain expectations of what a thing needs to look like. Like I'm
Yeah.
actually surprised it does well with a spaceman.
Mm.
But yeah, if you give it very abstract stuff, it's probably not going to find the backgrounds as easily.
100%, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Did my video finish yet? Man, I did not get a good, I don't know. I need to figure out how to do the space guy better. And you can obviously see like the colors don't really match particularly well here. This is again where like in an ideal world, I would take this into, I'd take this into like After Effects and color correct and that sort of thing. But, as a starting point, it's not bad. I do wonder why my image composition is looking so shitty. I think because Animate Diff runs with, it actually might be a model problem. Let me switch this to a different model. No, let's try. Which one of these do I want to try? I also don't really use SD 1.5 anymore, so I have no idea which of these is even good. Let's try this one. Cool. So that wraps up everything we want to do for this. So obviously, like if I didn't like this image, I would try to tweak my prompt or try to figure out like actually, you know what? I'm gonna stop this real quick. I think I want to change my prompt. So moon horizon. Let's try a horizon line, see if that helps. Earth and black. Okay, cool. So I'll try this one more time. Oh, and I finally got this to happen. So see how my like Chrome is all gone? That's because there's something up with like the way that like the pinch to zoom works on this tool. If this happens to you in Run Comfy, the way to do this is basically to refresh your page. And hopefully, nope, still not there. Okay, the other way to do this is if you go to comfyui.com and you go to My Machines and you go to Open. Yeah, there we go. That resets the Chrome. It's a very weird bug. I've reported it to Run Comfy a couple times now. Okay, cool. So we are at the end of class. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Again, we will have some Q&A times over the next couple weeks. So if you need time to digest all the random stuff I threw at you over the past 4 weeks, like please feel free to either DM me for some times to meet or to show up to those Q&As. I hope you found some of this enjoyable or at least got you started in place to look into. And then, yeah, please don't be a stranger. Like, especially for this group, you guys paid a lot of money for this class. So please feel free to use me and DM me and ask questions. Like I'm always happy to help and support. Yeah. So, and again, if you make some cool animations, like please continue to share them in the Slack channel. And yeah, I hope you found some fun stuff in this class.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I'll hang out for like 10 or 15 minutes if people want to while I generate this next animation. If people have questions, I'm happy to answer more questions too.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. It's been a great 4 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
some of it I feel like I went in and out, but
I know.
overall it forced me to learn all of these different tools. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Derek, this is a off-topic question, but thanks for everything, of course. You've been always amazing. Do you think that any hunch you would have about training a very